Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Saturdays and Stores podcast brought to you right here on the Crossover Media Network. My name is Kanaye, and I'm just going to come out right away and say I probably jumped the gun a little bit with the title on the last episode being about how UConn's back. I'm now 0 for 2 when saying that UConn should be able to defeat an opponent enough with their talent alone. I said that once going into the Maui in my preview for that, where I said that the talent disparity between them and Memphis should be enough for UConn to beat Memphis, even if they don't play the best game. Obviously, we know what happened. That was definitely not the case in that game. And I kind of said something along those lines going into Saturday's game against Seton Hall this past week. And obviously, UConn dropped that game, arguably the worst Power 5 loss in the country this year. But they were able to bounce back and get a win against Villanova on Tuesday. So that was nice to see. Definitely was concerned at certain points in that game as well, but they were able to kind of really dial in the late stretches of the game and get the win ultimately. So definitely going to talk about what I was able to take away from both those games. But before we get into that, if you like this podcast, if you like the other content you see on this channel, please subscribe, like, tell other people about our videos. It really helps with getting this content out to more people and the whole algorithm on YouTube. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get into the Seton Hall game. So UConn lost 69-68. Unfortunately, some really, really bad late game blunders ultimately led to Scotty Middleton solo ball turning the ball over, trying to dribble out of the trap, which probably wasn't the best idea. I know you can make the argument that there should have been a call there, but UConn shouldn't have put the game in a position where it could have been decided by the officiating. Yeah, there were some bad calls in the game. I'm of course, I'm definitely going to side with UConn on the calls they didn't get. But I mean, again, this is not a good loss. This is not a good team that they played. Only one Big East win prior to playing UConn, which was against DePaul. Not a great team either. And you shouldn't have to be in this close of a game with them. Just this caliber of an opponent. It's unfortunate to see Seton Hall not be very good this year, but that's just the reality of what it is. And UConn, they shouldn't have been in such a close game with them. Shouldn't have put in a position where the referees ultimately decide the game. And even if it was, even if there was it was clean. I don't understand the solo ball's process and trying to dribble out of that trap. That was just that was a fault on him, and I think he bounced back against Villanova a little bit, but that was a tough look, and obviously that turnover led to Scotty Middleton. He went up, he missed his own shot, got his own rebound, tipped it back in, and forced Hassan to take a 3/4 court shot, which obviously didn't fall. But yeah, just to talk a little bit about kind of went on in this game. UConn just got off to a really slow start. They trailed for most of the game. It's just that's just a theme with this team this year. They get out to really slow starts. Saw it against Seton Hall, saw it against Villanova again on Tuesday. And it's just not often that they're able to kind of get up for the competition that they're playing a lot of the time. Yeah, like we saw against Marquette and St. John's, they were able to really get out to those hot starts just because I think of how amped they were going into some of those matchups. But I think, it's the Big East. I understand some teams this year, the Big East is a little bit weaker this year than it has been in the past. But you still have to get up for these games. And no team is going to slouch over. I mean, clearly we saw that on Saturday where Seton Hall played UConn incredibly tough, just no quit in them. And I think they were able to really be aggressive. I think they understood that Hassan – in the minutes Hassan had to play, which he did have to play a lot of minutes in this game, which I don't think he was at 100% yet. And I still don't think he's at 100% yet. Hopefully he will be for Sunday against St. John's at the Garden. But they were really able to get up and pressure him defensively, specifically Dylan Adewusu. He really got up in the grill of Hassan Diarra, was able to force a steal. I also think he also was able to pick the pocket of trying to remember. It might have been Mahaney in the game. Maybe not Mahaney. I think it was might have been Solo, or I forget off the top of my head. But Dylan Adewusu did a really good job, really pressuring the ball and just getting up in the grill of whoever was kind of the functional point guard at that time. I think another big part of this game was just how kind of cold we were shooting wise. A lot of the UConn guys did not shoot particularly well from the perimeter. Solo for reference, 4 for 9. I mean, yeah, 4 threes is good, but he missed a few good looks, which you obviously want to fall, but of course didn't. And Jay Stu got a little bit of a quiet game from him. Um, Alex Caravan was somewhat able to get going, which was nice to see. Finally was able to knock down 2 threes. I want to say it was like 2 for his last 30 something before going into the Seton Hall game, which was obviously not good, but shot 7 for 14 from the floor. I definitely think he did a pretty good job in the points where he, again, like I talked about in last week's episode, actions where he doesn't have to think, he could just go and play off of his basketball instinct and just kind of go to the rim and get those floaters up and get those push shots around the basket. He's good at that, and he was able to knock down some big threes in this game. And one that should have probably been the dagger, considering that they had a 7-point lead with 58 seconds left in the ball game. But they, of course, ended up blowing that lead. The foul on the three on Dylan Adewusu, he made all three. And then, of course, Adewusu hit the game-time three to send it to OT. So that was obviously, disappointing to see that just having to go to OT in the first place with Seton Hall. And, of course, ended up losing the game. But I want to talk a little bit about a quote that Alex Caravan had after the game. I obviously can't remember it word for word, but it was somewhat along the lines of that the loss isn't on the coaching staff whatsoever. It falls on the players. He talked about how the players need to do a better job of really dialing in, going into the game, being able to get up for the matchup, no matter who it is you're playing. He said the coaching staff did fine in being able to prepare them and motivating them, and the desperation that they had to win that game, and just the players couldn't match that level of energy that the coaching staff brought going into Newark to play Seton Hall at the Rock. And I just think that's, again, one of the major themes of this team this year. There really is no killer instinct. These guys, it's not a slight to them, but there's no dog necessarily in a lot of these guys. I mean, you might see it a little bit from time to time in Hassan or Terrace Reed, James Stewart, Solo Ball. Maybe they have their moments here and there, AK. But I mean, really the guy who consistently brings the most energy is Liam McNeely. And I think we saw in the absence where he didn't play because of his injury, that this team really was lacking a lot of fire and tenacity. I think the Villanova game was a perfect example of the energy that Liam brings playing for UConn this year. But this is something that last year's team, or even the team the year before, would have no problem doing. I mean, just last year, I guess they did lose at Newark last year, so maybe that's not the greatest example, but they were able to get up for any team. I mean, Georgetown, DePaul last year, two teams that weren't good by any means. But yeah, two teams that weren't very good last year by any means. They were able to get up for those games and beat them by 30, 20 points, whatever it ended up being, just how good that team last year was. But I mean, it's really just comes down to they need to develop some sort of killer instinct to them where they're not going to shrink to the level of the competition they're playing. They need to come out every game going forward like they're playing a Marquette, like they're playing a St. John's, like they're playing a Creighton. And it's really tough to look at this game because you see them go into Omaha, Nebraska, win a Chi Health Center for the first time in program history, behind Lee McNeely scoring 38 points, just a historic performance for a UConn freshman. And you kind of think, okay, maybe this is a turning point of a season that's been so up and down where there really is no guarantees and how far this team's going to be able to go in March. And I just think, you had the opportunity to, after that win in Omaha, to be able to go on the road to Newark, beat Seton Hall, beat Villanova at home, and hopefully prepare yourself for a marquee matchup with St. John's at the Garden coming this Sunday. And unfortunately, they dropped the game to Seton Hall. And like I mentioned, it's arguably the worst Power 5 loss in the country this year. And it really does make you think about how confusing this team really is, just with how good they can play at times when they really want to, and then how bad they can be on the other hand at times where they just can't get a stop defensively. They can't knock down shots. They look like they struggle a lot to get into their sets and their actions. And, I just think that it's kind of like, again, going back to what Caravan says, it has a lot to do with the player makeup that this roster has. Some of that does fall on the coaching staff, but I think a lot of these guys also ended up not necessarily panning out the way that the coaching staff banked on them being. Example, Aiden Mahaney. He only played 4 minutes in this ball game against Seton Hall, and he's had some moments here and there, like the Baylor game, or the game against Providence. He made some big shots in the game against Xavier on the road too, even though they lost that game. But I mean, that's just a guy who you look at him playing, and he still has no confidence out there on the floor. Alex Caravan for the early stretch of the season, before Liam went down, he looked like an All-American. He was playing at an All-American level. He looked like he had improved in every aspect of the game, which he needed to going into this year after last season. And after Liam went down, you just kind of saw him move up on the scouting report. His confidence really shrink when he didn't perform up to, I think, his own personal level of expectations, along with the rest of the country's. And I think he feels as if his NBA draft stock has definitely gone down, which it probably has. I know he was mocked as late first round pick at one point in the year, and I doubt he's at around that point in mock drafts right now. But on top of that, I think this coaching staff thought that Jalen Stewart and Jaden Ross were going to be a little bit further along than where they are right now. I understand both those guys have had flashes. Stewart more consistently on the offensive side of the ball. Jaden Ross, more so on the defensive side, where he was able to kind of get that stop against Ryan Nembhard and against Gonzaga at the Garden, which was a big moment in that game. But it's just I think it's definitely a building year, and it's a bridge year. It's building on the program and the guys that are here right now. I understand AK and Liam are probably gone after this year. We don't know who leaves in the portal. Mahaney maybe. Hassan and Sampson both graduate at the end of this year. So it's kind of building on the core guys, being that kind of sophomore class of Solo, Stewie, and Jay Ross. Going into next year with the loaded freshman class that they have, and whoever they can add in the portal, you're going to bring back Terrace Reed, maybe Aiden Mahaney, maybe he takes a leap next year. But I think they kind of, again, I've talked about it before, where you really do have to kind of change your perspective and how you watch this team. I think, I understand they have the chance to chase, go into the year. Most people thought that they were going to be a contention for true national championship contention to go and get that three-peat, something that's been so elusive since the Wooden era at UCLA. And I understand they're not playing up to the level of expectations that a lot of people had going to here, but I think a lot of those expectations were attributed to coming off of the back-to-back national championships. And getting some fairly big names in the portal, like an Aiden Mahaney was one of the more talked about transfers in the cycle. Landing Liam McNeely, 5-star freshman from that Montverde team that was so good and excelled so far in the freshman class of college basketball this season. And I just think that, you look on paper, and really a lot of people, including myself, were kind of banking on this team being good enough just because of Dan Hurley. And while Dan Hurley is, in my eyes, the best coach in sports still, and one of the best coaches in the game, regardless if you think he's the best or not, regardless whether you like him or dislike him, he can't do everything. Like Caravan said in his quote, coaches prepared them as much as they could. It was not a fault on them. It really felt on the players for not kind of showing up and playing up to the level that the coach staff wanted them to. And I just think, while that I do kind of align how I look at this game with that, I do think some of the late game faults do kind of fall on Dan a little bit. Just their inability to execute press breaks and inbounding the ball against the press is just really is frustrating to see. I mean, it's not even just in this game. It's been across against St. John's, especially at Gamble Pavilion. They really, really struggled to break the press in that game. And against Patino's press, they loves to run. And they had a tough time inbounding. They're forced to call timeouts a lot just because they can't get anyone open when trying to inbound the ball. And it's really frustrating to see as a a fan and someone who's just simply watching the game. And they need to be able to come up with, I think, some better plays to run coming out of those types of situations. And just to blow a 7 point lead with 58 seconds left, and then a 5 point lead with, geez, what was it, like 13 seconds left, or maybe even less in that game against Seton Hall in that OT period. I mean, that's just unacceptable. You can't do that. But I mean, if you find the silver lining, the Caravan was able to play a pretty solid game, kind of bounce back from how he's been playing as of late, which hasn't been very good. And I mean, yeah, that was really all I had to take away from that game. Again, not a good loss by any means. Definitely put UConn closer to bubble watch if they aren't already on it. And it was a win that if they do win, then maybe they're back in the poll, considering that they beat Creighton earlier in the week. But obviously, loss in Newark does not help. And for a while, it looked like it was going to be 2 losses straight. UConn going down 14 at one point to Villanova, Kyle Neptune's squad. But they were able to rally, and late in the game, they won on a 27-6 run to take down the Wildcats. So definitely really relief watching that run they went on towards the end. Just the defense that they played was outstanding in that run. Just Villanova couldn't get anything going, and UConn was able to blow up all of their actions. The way they defended the post against Eric Dixon was really, really impressive to see. And yeah, I think it was a really, really important win. I understand Villanova hasn't been great this year, but they've kind of had, arguably, I mean, they've had moments this year. Like, I mean, they beat UConn at Finneran Pavilion. They beat St. John's leading up to this game. And I just think, it was a really important win, I think, for vibes of the team going forward and really kind of building on the energy that they have. I think Liam was outstanding in the late stretches of this game. He didn't shoot the ball particularly well, but I just think the energy he brought and just what he was able to do late in the game and being able to crash the defensive glass. I mean, some of those contested rebounds he was able to pull down were just really, really tough and just really big hustle plays from him. I know at one point Jalen Stewart had a huge offensive rebound, was able to put it back. He was pretty quiet in this game, but I think those 2 points were huge for the team. Terrace Reed was outstanding in the second half, and I really do think it's kind of getting to a point where I think Terrace Reed should start going forward. Again, I love Samson Johnson, but I really do think his role is best as kind of a change of pace, coming off the bench, backup 5. I just think just with the Big East matchups they get, where so many of these guys, it's just such a physical league. I think having Terrace on the court is more favorable than what Samson brings at a lot of points. I really do think that Terrace's moments have shined a little bit brighter than Samson's this season. I think it's kind of getting to a point where I feel like the coaching staff should have no choice but to start Terrace. I don't think they see the same way that I do. And of course they know best. So, I'm not going to argue with them on that, but just from an outsider point of view, I think Terrace Reed probably should be the starting 5. He played 27 minutes in this game, 13 points, grabbed 9 boards, was able to dish out 3 assists too. I mean, just that dunk he had late in the game, just off the feed from William, was kind of iced the game. It was just great. It was, fired me up and the guys I was watching the game with. So it was really, really nice to see. And yeah, I think Terrace needs to bring that energy more often, and I think he's fully capable of it. That's a guy who I'm so excited to come to watch when he comes back to STORRS next season, plays the senior year. I think someone who really, really could be like all Big East good next year. Hopefully somewhere along that Adama Sanogo growth trajectory path line. I think that was a great get in the portal. I loved it from the time it happened, and I understand he's kind of had moments here and there, which were the concerns when he was transferred over from Michigan, and the turnovers and kind of being in La La Land at certain points. But when he does excel, it is really, really fun to watch. In this game, Hassan Diarra did start. He did get the start first time in a few games, just because of I think the knee injury he suffered against Creighton at Gamble Pavilion weeks back, and just the tendonitis I think he's experiencing. It's tough. He didn't play a great game. I think a lot of what he's dealing with injury wise is kind of getting to his head a little bit. He's had some bad turnovers in the last few games, which you didn't see out of him in the early stretches of Big East play. But hopefully, if he's able to get back to 100%, that's ideal because he is the best perimeter defender on this team and the best facilitator. But I do give a lot of credit to Solo Ball stepping up in that department. 6 assists in this game without a turnover to his name as well. Just, I've talked about it a lot where I'd like to see Solo Ball do more than just be a catch and shoot guy. He was able at times to actually hit shots off the dribble from distance, which was nice to see. I think he's definitely a guy who's more than capable of doing that going forward, even this year, and if he does end up coming back next year as well. But yeah, I mean, I always talk about how I want to see Solo try to attack closeouts a little bit more often, and yeah, try to do more to be a facilitator and get his guys open looks and get his teammates involved. And I think he was able to do a pretty good job of that in this game. Other than that, I mean, really only other notable guy was, Liam McNeely. 1 for 5 from three. Not his great shooting performance, of course, like I mentioned a little bit ago. But that three hit from the corner with Villanova defender closing out from the right. It really should have been an and one. Just Liam kind of took a hit after he released the ball, but that was a really tough shot to hit. That was huge to cut the lead to 2. And then of course Hassan was able to take a charge, gain back possession for Connecticut. So that was huge. I mean, I just think the grit that this team showed down the stretch in this game against Nova was huge and really, really important. With it's tough to get up for games like this, but they have to. I just talked about it for forever in my Seton Hall recap that I just did. They have to get up for these games. I understand it's a Tuesday night. They're playing at the XL, not Gamble. The atmosphere isn't going to be as good. Villanova is not the best team in the league, obviously, but it's still a team that beat you once, just beat St. John's, who is the best team in the league right now. And you have to show up for the game. And they got out to a slow start. They went down 14 at one point. They're really, really getting beat on Villanova's favorable matchups in the first half, specifically with Ruga Poplar and Jordan Longino. Longino really lit it up in the first half. They want to say made 2 threes, and then Luka Poplar was just on that Miami Final Four team that UConn played 2 years back. I think he ended up he scored 19 in this game, and he really got some favorable matchups in the first half. Was able to get to, or my mistake, Eric Dixon was able to get to the line, but I will say that I do think UConn did defend Eric Dixon pretty well in both matchups this year against Villanova. I think they did a pretty good job in defending Eric Dixon, who is the leading scorer in college basketball still. He finished with 17, but 9 of those came from the free throw line. He knocked down his open threes, but 2 for 6 from 3. Only made 3 field goals in this game. So, I mean, call him free throw merchant if you want. He still is the leading scorer in the country. And that's a guy who you need to come out and defend at a high level. And outside of them fouling him, I think they did it. But again, they need to be more disciplined with how they defend. Guys like Eric Dixon, specifically Terrace and Sampson, you can't jump at some of those ball fakes. And Eric Dixon is really poised when just with his footwork and everything, you can't jump on those. So they stay down and just go straight up with your hands. And I mean, that's just something that they need to do. They haven't fully done this year, but they need to do more consistently going forward. But yeah, just really, I think it comes down to Liam McNeely in this game. He is the best player on this team. I'm more than comfortable saying that at this point in the year. Just what he was able to bring at the end of the game, just that energy. And, you had Cam Spencer and Tristan Newton in attendance, which I'm sure I speak for all of Husky Nation when I say that those guys are very, very much missed. But it was pretty reminiscent, with Cam in attendance, Liam kind of throwing out a fist pump when Villanova had to take a timeout after UConn took the lead. And just some of the energy he brought just really reminded me of some of the stuff Cam would do last year. And I think that was really, really good to see. And that's something this team needs. They need this energy, especially going into Sunday. But I just all around good win. Definitely was a little worried at times that they were going to end up dropping their second straight game, which wouldn't have been good. But they were able to figure it out, get the win at the XL, beat Nova. And just going ahead quick preview for Sunday. I believe it's a noon tip-off at Madison Square Garden against the Johnnies, Rick Pitino. I know Rick Pitino's kind of in the Red Storm. They've been going viral somewhat recently just with the series Vice is doing, kind of like a Hard Knock style in-season documentary series on the just Rick Pitino and the Red Storm this season. And I've watched the episodes so far, and they've been really good. And just, you know, I think the game against them at Gamble was the one you really needed to win. There very much is a world where St. John's comes out and blows UConn out of the water on Sunday. They need to come out hot the way they did against St. John's at Gamble Pavilion, but they need to continue that for the whole game. They need to really have that killer instinct to put teams to bed. They can't fool around and let St. John's get back in the game. I mean, that's a team that's so good even when they're down double digits. I mean, so many times this year, St. John's has gone down, has seen a double-digit deficit, and they're able to come back and keep fighting. I mean, that team just has no quit. Pitino has completely got those guys to buy in, and just the caliber of players they have. Yeah, they don't shoot the ball great, but just with what they're able to do with Kanaye Richmond, who is playing as like an All-American with his recent play, R.J. Lewis, who can do a little bit of everything, Zuby Ejiofor, Simeon Wilcher, just Scott, just Aaron Scott, just they got really, really great pieces, Iwachukwu, I really, really do not know how UConn's necessarily going to be able to kind of handle the storm in this game. I think a lot of it's going to really rely on, again, coming out hot and just being able to defend at a high level. They can't let St. John's hit shots the way they did when St. John's was able to go on that. I want to say it was like a 26-2 stretch maybe against maybe it was probably that's probably wrong, but that run at the end of the first half they were able to go on against UConn at Gamble. They can't let that happen. If St. John's, who's not a good shooting team, is hitting shots, then you're really in trouble just with how they defend at such a high level. The press that Pitino just loves to run, which burns so much clock. And with a team like UConn that already struggles to get into sets and actions, it puts more pressure on them to speed it up when they're already not comfortable kind of getting into some of the actions that they run as is. So just with the short clock that press forces, it could get ugly. But yeah, hopefully Hassan is 100% because that's going to be really, really important. Again, Liam has got a few games under his belt since that first game back. So hopefully he's able to show up and hit some big shots. Definitely going to need it. Hoping Alex Garabin can kind of get back on track. Did have a great game against Villanova. I'd also like to see Stewie kind of, definitely try to be a little bit more pronounced in his offensive presence in this game. I think that's a guy who was really, really hot against St. John's in early when they played at Gamble Pavilion a few weeks back. And yeah, I mean, just solo ball. I think he's kind of dealing with something in his wrist and his non-shooting hand. So I think that's kind of messed up his shot a little bit. So hopefully he's able to knock down some big threes in this game too. And again, do more attack closeouts, pass the ball around a little bit more. But I think that's pretty much going to take care of everything that I have for this episode today. Again, as always, please, if you like this podcast or any other content you see on the Crossword channel, tell other people about it. Please like, subscribe. We love seeing what you guys have to say in the comments below. So please tell us what you have to say about whatever it is we might be covered in the comments below. But other than that, until the next episode, I'll see you all next time.